Good evening and welcome to this edition of the India Development Debate. I'm coming to you from the gas chamber of the National Capital Region, New Delhi. Yes, since Diwali time, you can blame the farmers, you can blame the firecrackers, you can blame the politicians. But all of us living in the National Capital Region, living in North India, including in Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, Punjab, are having to breathe toxic air. The right to breathe no longer seems to be a right that we enjoy anymore at all. You're seeing the images on your screens. North India, primarily the National Capital Region, continues to be smogged out with toxins. Having said that, there is anger which is palpable today when we saw Parliament getting set to debate air pollution. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? What we saw in Parliament were not our politicians trying to come out with a solution, trying to figure out how we can stop the crop burning in Punjab, the laws that may be needed to curb pollution, how New Delhi should no longer be the right of way and a bypass for trucks, or how we can introduce electric vehicles faster, curb down pollution. What we saw is on your screens. We saw empty chairs. Only 18% attended this crucial debate. Today, we're not just going to be discussing the impact on health. It impacts, of course, the health. It impacts the productivity. It also impacts the economy. Our Prime Minister lives in New Delhi, but till today, he has not spoken on pollution. We have seen him talk about ease of living and the increase of forest cover in his last 2 foreign trips, but he's not talked yet about pollution. We're not going to just talk about that because the Prime Minister, while going on these foreign trips and talking in Parliament, has a vision of India achieving a $5 trillion economy. Is that possible when those images, those horrific images that you see on your screen, stay? We're going to be talking on the impact on productivity and the economy at large. And before I go across to my guest and I introduce my guest, I'd like to invite Vikram Oza, who's put together a lot of data, the connection that actually exists between pollution as well as economy. Vikram, we decided to debate this today because of course, we must keep this topic alive. I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be down to civil society to try and arrive at a solution. It's going to be down to the startups, the corporates, and civil society to come out with innovations that can actually fix this, because our politicians, whether at the state level or the center, are clearly not interested. But you have got some very interesting data together on the impact that it's going to have on the economy at large.
Absolutely. All your points that you make at the outset are very valid. Pollution, of course, can have a deep economic impact, particularly in India's developing economy. Let's talk about the various hits the GDP takes because of pollution and what's already of immense concern. India has lost more than 8.5% of its GDP in 2013 because of the higher cost of welfare that we incur and the depletion in our labor force because of air pollution. This is what a World Bank study of 2016 is revealing. If you were to calculate the impact at the current size of India's GDP of $2.6 trillion, then that loss stands at about $221 billion. It's humongous. And don't doubt the connection between pollution and disease. Air pollution, for one, has emerged as the deadliest form of pollution and the 4th leading risk factor for premature deaths worldwide. And these deaths, they've cost the global economy about $225 billion in lost labor income in the year 2013. And if you consider a 2017 study, India is actually topping the world in pollution-related deaths. That's 2.5 million of the total 9 million pollution-related deaths that are reported worldwide in the year 2015. And if you combine Mumbai and Delhi, the cost of air pollution is about $10.6 billion, again reported in the year 2015. That's about 0.7% of the country's GDP. So how does this impact play out among employers in our economy? For one, they will find it increasingly difficult to retain top-level executives, the highly skilled workers who are most likely to move to less polluted cities. Even if they stay, there is decreased workplace efficiency. The long periods of acute pollution, they result in sickness. Obviously, there are going to be absences among employees. And if employers were to incur higher overhead costs to address this problem, then opting for pollution-free office spaces, or even if they are going to invest in air purifiers, they come with big price tags that can deeply impact their bottom lines. The rising air pollution is also likely to impact rainfall patterns in the country and could decrease monsoon, which can cause extensive financial losses to the farming sector, according to a United Nations report that is highlighting this fact. The impact on biodiversity and ecosystems can run very deep and very harsh. On the tourism front, tourists generally stay away from polluted cities, deeply affecting the all-important dollars that come in through the tourism business that can be raked in and very important for a developing country like ours. And sure enough, you can go ahead and ban polluting vehicles. You can shut down factories to control pollution. You can put strictures on construction activity, say in the NCR, which is said to generate these vast quantities of dust particles. But that means holding back growth in the growth drivers themselves. Auto, manufacturing, real estate, all of these suffer and their contribution to the GDP falls immensely. So then what do you do? Like many experts are suggesting, for one, healthcare budgeting should go up because that will have at least some sort of positive impact on the GDP because of what you will save going ahead when it comes to the labor force of the country. Already it is believed that global healthcare costs are going to shoot up from $21 billion in 2010 to $176 billion in the year 2060. India is going to have to match this, and also we need to integrate our air pollution control within our development policy, just like they have in China. And all of this needs to happen very soon because time for sure is running out.
Right. Thanks, Vikram, for putting all of that in perspective for us, literally setting the stage for what I'm going to be now discussing with my panelists. And with that, I'd like to invite the three panelists that I've got tonight on the India development debate. Joining us is Dr. A.S. Soin. He's from Medanta. We've also been joined by Jaldhar Gupta, the founder of Nirvana Being. We're also being joined by Akash Banerjee on WhatsApp video call. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on this edition of the India Development Debate. Dr. Soin, I'd like to come to you first. You head the liver transplantation department at Medanta. Medanta has, of course, opened a new multi-specialty hospital in Lucknow, but your nerve center really has been in the National Capital Region. We all talk about the lungs. We often miss out the entire story and the impact that pollution has on other organs like the liver, which is in charge of flushing out the toxins. The first thing I'd like to ask you is that in the last couple of weeks, have you actually seen a spike in hospitalization? How is it impacting life in the National Capital Region? It obviously has to have an impact on productivity. And, when we talk about air purifiers, walk masks and all, does it really help?
Everyone talks about the effects of air pollution on lungs because obviously that's where we breathe dirty air. But after the particles and the other pollutants like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, carbon monoxide, all these inhalants after the lung, including the PM 2.5, that means the particulate matter which is less than 2.5 micrometer, they all go and settle in the liver. And then they incite inflammation of the liver, they incite what's called fibrosis of the liver. And after the lungs, the liver is hit the most because liver is where all the detoxification happens. So obviously all the toxic products will go to the liver. And scientific studies have shown over the years that in areas of high air pollution, the incidence of liver inflammation, fatty liver, liver fibrosis, liver cancer, cirrhosis, all of these is much higher. So as far as the NCR is concerned, apart from a spurt in the cases of asthma, in the cases of lung infection, we also have noticed over the past few years that there's been an increasing incidence of fatty liver, liver fibrosis and liver cancer. So that's of real concern. And obviously, apart from causing ill health, it has economic impact. And it also means that we have to do more in prevention of this kind of liver disease, apart from the standard, traditional, conventional prevention with vaccination for hepatitis B, taking less alcohol, looking after your liver in terms of controlling your diabetes, lipid levels, cholesterol levels, lifestyle, etc. So this is an additional problem which is often not appreciated.
Akash, let me come to you. This what we're discussing is serious business. There is absolutely no joke about it. I don't even know if a lot of the HR departments, corporates have realized how severe the problem is. Yes, we don't send our children to schools. We don't send them to colleges. It's not as if offices are saying employees stay home, work from there. It's not safe for you to be on the roads. Even when odd even was carrying on, I'm sad to report there were still traffic jams, and of course there was not a single traffic cop in sight. The politicians are far too busy to be coming out with a solution. So is it really going to be down to civil society? Is it going to have to be civil society that's going to have to come out with a solution? Something that we saw China deal with recently too.
I mean, if you ask me, if you put a gun to my head and say that is it going to be politicians versus civil society as far as air pollution is concerned, I'll bet my money on civil society. Of course, there was some amount of lack of compliance as far as odd even was concerned, but without any significant police presence, a city like Delhi actually marginally complied with something as huge as this, a city which is notorious for having broken laws. So somewhere down the line, I'm happy to report that after 3 years, some people have definitely woken up. Have the politicians woken up? Absolutely not. What we have, of course, seen today. Now, staying with the economic part, because you see, politics doesn't lead you anywhere. I spend a lot of time on the internet, way too much time on social media. There hasn't been perhaps a study done on this, but it should be. Expats come back to India with huge expectations and hopes. People who have gone abroad coming back to India, wanting to invest in India, make in India, whatever, grow with India. They know the hassles that they would face in India, the government, etc., etc. I have never, ever seen people abuse themselves for having decided to come back to India after they were breathing the air here. Not the government, not the red tapeism, not the bribery, but they were abusing the day they decided to come back to India. And I'm not talking about one, two, every other person who on social media was saying that we decided to come back to India, they were regretting the decision. Imagine the economic cost of this. Of course, Vikram took you through some of the broader economic parameters. But how are we going to get to that 5 trillion? I mean, unless it is all going to be Adani's and Adani's doing it. If we believe that it will be individual small companies who are going to power the next generation of businesses, who is going to set up those businesses? And this is not about Delhi. This is North India, entire swaths of the country. And when a country gets a bad name, nobody's going to say, no, Bombay is away. Achha, udhar to sea breeze chalta hai. We will set up a industry in a factory in Bombay. It doesn't work like that. The country is getting a bad name, and the lack of action. Sorry to say that even a country like China had more proactive politicians, proactive administration, proactive response to an emergency. There is a global map that shows wind pollution across the world, and India is at the pride spot number 1. Who on earth is going to bet their money on such a country?
And that is a very serious point that is also being made. This is a time when we are seeing our Prime Minister, our Commerce Minister go out, talk about ease of living, ease of doing business, trying to attract foreign investments. But seeing those images, those horrific images, can we realistically expect FDI and for it to set up headquarters in the national capital? Gurgaon is of course supposed to be the home for the Fortune 500 companies as well as the MNCs. Jaydar, you live in Gurgaon. It is known as the home of the MNCs. That's how Gurgaon started. It was because companies like Gillette and PepsiCo decided to take a bet on the suburb and didn't set up in New Delhi. And now look at the toxic air. It has turned out to be a gas chamber. It has forced someone like you to change your life, to get into this business of Vogue masks as well as air purifiers and all of that. But at the end of the day, while they buy the equipment that you're selling, it's still not good enough. It can only filter out so much.
Absolutely. I mean, protective gear at the end of the day is protective gear. It, everything has its limitations, and there's a lot of technicals involved. I mean, just a simple thing like a mask, you need to know how to wear a mask. I mean, the fit is very important, and you have to do a fit seal test. Most people don't know this, and they don't they're not really technically into exactly what they're doing. But I can tell you, this whole issue of air pollution, the good out of it. I'm going to focus on the positive. I think this is the first time it has united all of North India. Let's look at the magnitude of the problem. We have 500 million people. This is one of the most highly densely populated belts in the world. Right from Punjab to Bengal, 500 million people have been impacted. Let me talk about just Gurgaon. I think, when we talk about elections and we talk about, electoral decisions, I think we are now moving beyond religion and caste, and people are coming together and saying, what the hell is going on? Our survival is at stake. And that's a big thing for this country. And it's shocking that there's no politician or political party that has actually availed it. I see this as a political opportunity. It's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, and everybody has showed us that there is no leadership in this country. Each and every one of them has run away from the problem and left us kind of fending for ourselves. I'm talking to executives here who are saying they want to leave. I'm talking to executives here who are saying that 50% of the families in Gurgaon, I can tell you, have some kind of short-term impact of air pollution. People are suffering. There are all health issues. I personally am suffering from bronchial asthma that I acquired the day after Diwali in 2018. People are spending, on average, families are spending between 17 and 22,000 rupees per family on air pollution protective gear. These are some basic studies that have been done by a company called Nagaro here in Gurgaon. People are saying that they're willing to give up their increments this year. They just want this bloody air pollution problem to get fixed. This is absolutely, it's come down to an issue of survival. We are in survival mode. The good thing is that it has brought civil society together on a common platform. In terms of business, it's deeply affected. Consumer psyche is affected. Our emotional well-being is affected. I mean, it puts a lot of stress. It puts a lot of, it sends people into a depression. I mean, just look, it's all gray all the time. We need to, we need to get together and we need to force change. I mean, civil society, this is our opportunity.
Just saw in a chance
I
to
know
come in
Delhi
now.
election is coming up, and this is our opportunity to really force change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see Dr. Soin raise his hand, so I'm going to come to him. So very valid
Yeah,
points.
can I make a
also being
comment?
made backed by data that Jayadar is talking about. That on average 22,000 rupees is being spent on air purifiers. That's money that could have gone back into the economy as well, since we're talking about the economic impact. Dr. Soin, come in. You want to say something?
Well, what I wanted to say was that not only the civil society, which has come together on this dreadful common thread, needs to put in all the efforts, but also the NGOs and all political parties. I mean, obviously the National Party and the Delhi ruling party are different, but they should come together on this, and so should the Punjab and Haryana state governments, and they all have to have a concerted program. Call it national program and focus only on areas that are polluted, but they all have to come together. That's quite obvious. It's an emergency. And the other thing I wanted to make a point about was some simple things that everybody in the public should know so that they can reduce pollution and avoid air pollution during certain times of the day. So the pollution is typically the highest during the day and less during night. So if you can actually postpone your movement within, like your commute or you're going out or whatever you're up to the early mornings and the late evenings or the night, that is probably better. Better for you, better for everyone else. That's one. If you're using masks, then you should use N95 ones, because that's what's needed to keep most of the particles out, right? And the third thing is, if you're keeping air purifiers in your office or your rooms in your house, unfortunately, they need to be on all the time. If they're not on all the time, then the effect is basically halved or even reduced to a fourth. And they need to be on at full pep during the day, and you want to reduce them to about a third or half the strength during the night. So these are simple things that you should all know
What
to,
I want to
to be
ask
able
you
to
also
utilize the
is,
purifiers better and whatever money you're spending on them.
but Dr. San, before I go to the other guest, what I also want to ask you, and you began by saying we only talk about the impact on lungs and not the liver. It's often very said that liver damage is perhaps not reversible. In the last couple of weeks, have you seen a spike, or does the reaction actually begin with the lung? What happens to the human body as far as productivity also goes?
You know, the lungs, the liver, the heart, the kidneys all get affected. Fertility gets affected. And it's common knowledge that in the NCR, the general sperm count among men is actually declined over the last 10 years compared to the previous 10 years. And one of the causes is rising pollution. And the other thing is that all the substances, the pollutants in the air that I just named a few minutes ago, will affect most of these organs which I stated, including the heart. The effect of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which is basically lifestyle related, is also more severe in the body.
If I
The
could-
type 2 diabetic control is difficult to achieve in environments of air pollution, and the effects, the havoc that diabetes plays on the body is also more in areas which have high pollution.
Okay, so those are some valuable
In fact,
tips
the
also
time
that
is
are
not
coming in
far
from
when the
Dr. Soin,
insurance
heads the
com-
liver
when
department
they-
in Medanta. Yeah, I'm coming to insurance in just a bit. Akash Banerjee, you just heard what Jaydhar also had to say that, first of all, it's baffling how we're not seeing this as a political opportunity. You anyway said that if there has to be a gun, you're going to put the gun on, your money is going to be on civil society to try and figure out a solution. But having said that, what we've seen the last couple of weeks, I asked you this earlier. We've kept our kids and our college kids at home, but have we really seen the rest of the economy also take responsibility? We still expect to breathe this toxic air and to be as productive as we were, let's say, 2 months ago. It's actually humanly not possible, as Dr. Soin just told us.
Let me just quantify my point about civil society. I'm just saying is that civil society as of now is more aware than politicians, but it doesn't go as much as what is being spoken about, that this is a political opportunity. And unfortunately, I have an example for you. Yogendra Yadav, and this is not about politics. Yogendra Yadav had one candidate who wanted to make green and environment as his election peg, and they tried to do a bit of crowdfunding. And this is Yogendra Yadav's tweet, that after 48 hours or whatever, 3 days, the political candidate in question had a contribution amount of 50 rupees. So let us not go ahead of ourselves by saying that today the population is ready to take on this challenge, that they are aware. Please remember, we are having a very, very educated conversation at this point of time. All this awareness that we are talking about, and Gurgaon, for example, is only the urban upper middle class and the elite who understand, who have a global point of view, who know that, in global cities at 50 AQI, you'll have processions being taken out against politicians. You will have street marches at 50 AQI. Here we send school children to school at 200, 300, 400. And even if you keep them at home, are they breathing some Himalayan air at home? Because of course, as you pointed out, the function of air purifiers is also debatable. I mean, there is no clear-cut answer, yes or no, whether it helps or not. So having said that, the last 3 years that we have seen seriousness of this problem, we have only and only come up to understand that there is a problem. Can you believe it that after repeated incidents like this, we don't even have an official confirmation as to why this happens? Can you give me one government document that explains to us why this happens? Because right now, the debate still will rage on how much is local, how much is dust, how much is fire of crop burning. So we haven't been able to come to the basic understanding. Forget solving this problem. So we are far, far away, and it really needs a lot more. I have had politicians tell me on my face, this is not an issue. This is not a public issue. When politicians can relax, why do you think there were only 18 people today? And let's not take politicians as fools. They know it doesn't matter, except some circles of educated people. It doesn't matter. Let's accept it.
Okay, that seems to be a very grim picture that you're also painting over there, that it doesn't matter, there is gloom and doom, and the politicians realize that maybe it's not going to turn out to have an impact on the votes. I think that's basically what Akash Banerjee is trying to say, that when it comes to time comes to cast the ballot, then maybe the majority is not going to remember. It's only going to be very few people who will make air pollution in the environment something to talk about. Jay, let me come to you, because you went through this. You raised the point of how much is also being spent on average by a family in North India at the moment when it comes to just buying gear to breathe slightly better air. 22,000 rupees, I think, is the average that you said. And I want to take this point up with Dr. Soin. What about insurance? It's not as if healthcare is getting cheaper, right? So if you're going to need to buy all of this, you're going to have to go to doctors a lot more. Isn't it also time that we see the private sector, government insurance companies, the private insurance companies, don't we have to see a cascading impact when we talk about premiums, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, there's an impact all around. And, I want to tell Mr. Modi that his $5 trillion economy plan is going up in smoke as we speak. 500 million people, directly impacted, their health and life directly impacted. I would say out of that, 250 million people are under the age of 18. What are you going to do with a $5 trillion economy? Your incredible India has gone up in smoke. I don't know which investor is going to, put money into India with confidence after this is playing out in the national capital. It's just absolutely shameful. And here's, the city still asking for a politician to kind of stand up and own this. Since 27th? We're about on day 24. Day 24, and there is no politician. And it's absolutely shameful that in the parliament today, that it was listed for 2 p.m. Out of 543 ministers, 115 showed up. I mean, these politicians need to be treated like children. I want you guys in the media to demand an absentee note. I want a note from those 428 absentee ministers why they did not show up in parliament today to protect my health and life. I voted for them. I want some accountability. I would love to see them get jolly medical certificates and notes from Dr. Saab, sitting on this panel. It's absolutely shameful. I really, honestly, media, I urge you, please go after those 428 politicians. I want to know where they were today when my health and life mattered and the health and life of my children mattered.
Akash Banerjee, we're running out of time.
Media channels are debating the
I want to come to you also on
quality
another very
today.
valid point. We've seen, we don't know why those politicians were absentee. One of them, of course, was singled out yesterday. Yesterday, Gautam Gambhir, of course, had to face a lot of ire for not being there. That was just one of the politicians who was not there. But Akash Banerjee, because we said we would talk about health, we would also talk about the economy. Now, this is supposed to be the wedding season. It's also supposed to be the season which is for inbound tourism. That's when we see a lot of economic activity take place. But I would imagine that most tourists, if they were to see these images, would cancel. You've seen an emergency air declaration that has taken place. Having said that, isn't that going to be a big problem? The dent that India has taken overseas with just these horrific images. I remember on day one, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel was here, and I remember remarking on television, she's a very brave lady. But going forward, look at the way we've been talked about. Look at Leonardo DiCaprio, what he has said on Instagram today.
Listen, the problem is with these things is we like big celebrations and big announcements, and then we forget about the ramifications. It's taken us what, 2 years plus to understand the demonetization disaster. It's only now that we are understanding the catastrophe that GST has caused for the economy, and the government is now talking about rehauling the GST. Now imagine how many more years before the government actually comes to admit that there is a problem. My problem is not that there is no solution. My problem is that there is no acceptance of a problem. There is no acceptance of a problem.
The jury is out on demonetization. GST is increasing the tax net. I know that tax is a three-letter dirty word in India, but having said that, we are still seeing the GST collections go up. Yes, they are not being what they are, but this is different. We actually have data to see how bad the air is. With that, my producer is cueing me that we're running out of time. So I have to wrap up this debate. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists for being candid, for talking about this. We're on day 24. I wish there wouldn't be a day 25, but as per the forecast that Jayadhar has come out with, I think Wednesday is supposed to be a very bad day for pollution in North India, given the wind activity. So I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us on this debate. Right to breathe. I can't take it for granted anymore.